tax codes are now available to Working Papers. However, none of your templates or files have been updated for the new tax export code changes yet. Of course, all of your templates include mapping database that you have been applying to your clients' charts of accounts, so now we need to load the tax codes into the template files. If all of your templates use the same mapping structure, the process is relatively easy to manage. Update the first template using the file copy components to select groupings and mapping, and select mapping also select tax export codes to update each of the other templates. Now this is the same process that one would use on a client file to update the tax export codes in the mapping database of the client file and have the new updated map numbers automatically update the tax export codes assigned to the client accounts. But wait, I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's look at a template that I have added to my template list. So opening CaseWare Working Papers, from the Templates menu option, I have added CaseWare Zone Tax USA, and I'm just going to click the Edit button to open that up. Now that I'm in my template, I want to pull the updated tax export codes in from the Program Directory Tax database. To do this, I select Engagement Properties. In the Engagement Properties dialog, we have our tax jurisdiction set to USA, our tax entities, and my tax vendor is currently selected as well. By cycling through the available tax entities, we'll be prompted with changing entity copy appropriate tax codes. So I'm going to do that for S Corp. I'm going to do that for partnership. I'm going to do that for nonprofit. And I'll finish up with corporation to get me back to the C Corp. And you'll notice I responded yes each time the question was asked. Now, I've also selected a tax vendor, and I just selected the first one on the list. Notice in my example, I am using the ProSystem FX Tax. For different tax vendors, we're going to have slightly different results as we move forward, and I'll mention that as we get into the mapping and other areas. Now, what I've done ensures that the tax export codes available in the client file tax database are up to date. But we still have to go through the mapping database to ensure that we are not using any outdated tax export codes. So here I'll click OK, and it closes the engagement properties for me and accepts the changes that I've made so far. And then I'm going to go back to the engagement menu and select mapping. I do this to have a look to see if there are any changes that are necessary here. Now I do have to scroll all the way to the right to see the tax export code, M3 code, and the related entity type tax export codes and M3 codes for C Corp, S Corp, partnership, and nonprofit. And there's my M3 for C Corp, S Corp, and partnership. Now in my example file, I only have the tax export code for C Corp set up. But if I had them all properly set up in this file, simply by changing the tax entity in the engagement properties, the appropriate entity tax export codes and M3 codes where applicable would be automatically applied to the accounts when the accounts are mapped. And if I make a change with the accounts being mapped, it will automatically update to the appropriate export codes for the appropriate entity. Now, if the tax software selected in engagement properties no longer supports a code that was previously used, it will be displayed with a warning to the left of the assigned code. So I'm just going to scroll down here, have a quick glance through these tax codes to see if I have any warnings showing up in my file. And sure enough, once I get down to my cost of goods sold section, I can see that I have some warnings showing here. Now it turns out I have a tax export code error, and the tax export code is invalid. The warnings will depend on the tax software that you're using. So when warnings do appear, you must clear the erroneous tax export codes and locate new codes for that particular package. For the selected package, the codes A01 through A07 are no longer valid, as you can see here. And I believe they should be updated to include a prefix of 1125. So I'm just going to very quickly update the tax export code column by adding 1125s in front of my codes, and I'll copy those where I can to make this process a little faster. So that's A05 down to here, and the 5s are down here as well. One more, and then just a couple more here, and we'll have this updated to the new codes. And now I believe, oh, there's a couple more there, so let me just copy this one and paste it. So with all those updated, I'm going to take the shortcut here, and I'm just going to grab that all the way down to here, copy it to my clipboard using Control-C, and then I'm going to paste it in, starting with the first one here, just to update that, because it's this column that's actually being applied to your accounts when we run the autofill feature a little bit later. Similarly, if I have my M3 code set up, it would be this column that's being applied to the account. And when I change my entity engagement properties from Corp to S Corp, what should happen is the codes that have been set up in the other columns would overwrite the codes that are showing in these two columns, which would then update any accounts that have been previously mapped. So all that is going to flow as we update our mapping database accordingly.